Good evening, everyone. Jose J. Garcia, real estate investor, coach, and mentor. Got another special treat for all of you this evening. I know it's a recording, and I know there's going to be a lot of questions, but we will get to that. So, special guest with me this evening. He is a mobile home park owner slash operator. He is a podcaster. We're going to talk a little bit about that also, and he's an attorney, a lawyer. So, a lot to come on some of that also. But Ferd Niemann, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks, Jose. How are you, man?
Absolutely good as always. So a lot warmer. I know we were just in 7 degree weather. I think
Yeah, it
that
was
was
pretty
rough.
cold. Pretty cold last week, so it's still cold
Louisville.
here. Still
Yeah,
cold here, but
yeah.
not as bad.
We're getting back up there. So for I know you do the law and obviously you own the parks, you operate them also, which is huge. But you know, what areas I guess do you cover law right now?
Well, on the law firm side, we do pretty much anything real estate or corporate. So we'll do, contracts, leases, title review, survey review, bank docs, closings, LLCs. We do syndications as well. Do a lot of zoning analysis and zoning work. Those are my main MH practice areas, which is most of our business. We do some other stuff, apartments and automotive dealers on tax incentives and things like that. But there's six of us here on the law firm, six lawyers on the law firm side. So most of us are heavy real estate. We got one guy that's a litigator that handles that kind of stuff. So
Is all this in Kansas City where you handle the law?
yeah, well, the lawyers live here, but basically we're allowed to practice in most states and most practice areas. Some states that we're not allowed by regulation or licensure on a certain task. In some states, we're not competent to do it. For example, Iowa has instead of title insurance is illegal in Iowa. So we have to do Iowa title guarantee. Well, you have to have an Iowa bar license, which we don't have. But then you also have to have the skill of doing that different process, which we don't have, just we haven't done it. So we can do in Iowa, we would do, the contracts, the leases, the closings, bank docs, other stuff, syndication, operational consulting, business type stuff. But we would need to hire local counsel, to do the title piece.
So how does this happen? You're an attorney, you do law, obviously you do great on that. Where does mobile home parks come in this? Why mobile home parks?
Well, I used to be a commercial real estate analyst at Jackson County Government here in Kansas City, so I got to see
Oh,
all kinds of complex real estate deals. Most of all the food groups, including mixed use and tax incentive stuff. So I just kind of got into MH as I saw. I was like, let me analyze these deals on my own, and then start investing in them, and it worked out really well, and made some good money, and had some good projects. Started growing the team. I only had so much of my own money, so started raising money from investors through private placement memorandums, and have kind of grown from there. And now I got a big team on the MH side. We got parks in 5 states, so we're spread out there. But on the law side, we're based in Kansas City, but we can practice maybe probably in like 30 states. We've done stuff in.
okay. Doing all this with the real estate law, does that help you get a
Oh,
mobile
sure.
home park?
Oh, sure. I mean, it helps. I mean, especially helps on the due diligence and legal side. I mean, I have a strong understanding of zoning. I've got finance and accounting background too, so I'm proficient in the financial analysis stuff. So the combination helps to mitigate risk on due diligence, underwriting. Help with I've refinanced deals with Fannie Mae. I've done tenant in common deals, and I've done syndications and 1031s and all that. So the law background is certainly helpful. On just they teach you how to be paranoid about risk in law school. I mean, it's kind of like looking around corners, is like knowing what's coming ahead is kind of what they try to teach you, and look for problems look for problems and come up with solutions when some people don't yet see the problem. So it definitely is a helpful background.
Is there a big difference when it comes to law legality when you talk about real estate, traditional versus a mobile home park?
Well, the blocking and tackling is generally similar. Where MH is more nuanced, in particular, is on zoning because a lot of mobile home parks, most of them are 50 plus years old. Well, back then there were not really detailed codes with the cities on on anything in some cities, but in particular on MH. Most nowadays cities have current codes, and most parks are either A, illegal, or B, legal non-conforming, meaning grandfathered. So it's really important if you're going to do infill, or really important if you're going to demo homes or bring in homes, or if you're going to try to expand the park, or if you quote abandon a lot for 6 or more months, the utilities get shut off. There's a lot of rights and rights you need to fight for, but then also privileges that you could lose if you don't watch it. So the zoning piece is really MH nuanced. Um, title and survey is probably more important than MH because a lot of the sellers are not as professional shops. So they don't have the good records and they maybe have liens or encumbrances or encroachments that they shouldn't. And then surveys are important in particular if you're doing infill because you can't put a mobile home on a gas line. So you'll need to know not just where the property boundaries are, but where the easements are and where the utility lines are, in addition to infrastructure of the electric pedestals and all that. So there's definitely some MH stuff. And then when you're selling homes, you got Dodd-Frank, you got broker's license stuff, dealer license stuff that comes into play depending on the locale. So there's certainly MH specific stuff. Doing a contract, it's pretty much the same. And there's other, you're not going to care as much about the roof or the mechanicals like you are the in-ground infrastructure. You're going to be more concerned about code violations than perhaps some other things. So there's a lot of overlap, but there's certainly stuff that I know as a mobile home park operator that other lawyers don't, that is helpful because of my operational skill, and then and vice versa. I'm working on a $40 million storage deal right now as a lawyer, and a lot of my MH knowledge is irrelevant. It's just my underlying real estate knowledge. Now, some of my diligence knowledge of capital markets, things like that, are still helpful in a storage deal. But I have some storage investments, but they're all passive. I'm not an operator. Or I got one little small storage park that came with my MH park. So I'm not a big storage operator or expert on the field ops.
Yeah, we looked slightly into that. It looked very congested, to say the least, when it came to storage. But most of our followers and viewers that are going to be watching this video are more Lonnie dealers. That they're getting their feet wet, they're getting into the first one, and we have coached some that have went off to buy a park. So it's definitely almost like graduating levels. But for those of you that are watching this video, I mean, this is a prime example of, and we talk about this due diligence. This is not an ordinary one mobile home. Come in, it looks like a good deal, and you run with it. I mean, Ferd, I'm sure there's a lot more other things also behind the scenes that it's just having to get through all this here. You obviously know like a back of your hand because you also do it. Park operator, owner, and you do the law, so it just back and forth. It just transitions accordingly. But I mean, and saying it even that way, should somebody who preferably has a little experience or some experience already investing in a few mobile homes and getting to that park side, should they almost go to you, an attorney, and maybe before signing anything?
Well, I mean, I'm biased on this, yes, of course, right? They should go to any attorney, they should come to me, right? I mean, what's really important on a contract side is having the good terms in the front end. So, drafting the LOI, I have a binding LOI that I give out for free all the time. And then drafting the contract. A lot of people say, I don't want to pay you to draft the contract. I want to have them draft the contract. I'm like, no, you're losing them because it's going to take me 20 or 30 minutes to revise my template, but we have all these favorable terms in there, that some of which are in there solely to see if the opposing counsel is competent in real estate law. And like, there's 5 provisions in there that, like, competent a lawyer always redlines. I'm like, this is literally like a part of the application process to be a lawyer. It's like, I make you do the test, do the PSA against me, and I want to see what you're missing, because if you miss stuff, I'm like, okay, you're not good at issue spot, you're not good at analysis, things like that. So drafting the contract is actually cheaper and it's way more favorable. And same thing with the bill of sale or assignment of leases. So the more you get legal team involved in the front end, I think the better. Obviously, there's the cost to it, right? So if you've got, if you're buying a 7-space park for 22,000, legal fees are going to be more painful than if you're buying a 77 space for $1,022,000, right? So, because there's some stuff that is cost effective with bulk, and some stuff's not. But like, if I'm negotiating a contract best I can on a $22,000 deal, it's probably going to be just as much time and cost versus $1 million deal. Now, $1 million deal, they probably have better opposing counsel, so that may have a little bit more work, but it may be like 20% more time. But relative to the deal, it's 100 magnitude of pain. So I see a lot of guys that they're like, look, I know I need to hire you for ABCD, but on this deal, all I can afford is A and B. So, give me what you can. We'll figure out the closing docs ourselves. We'll just roll the dice on the bank docs. We'll the zoning, I'll just call the city and make friends with them. Like, okay, I mean, and they recognize sometimes like that's not best practice, but I get it. I've been there. I used to do single family and duplexes and flip houses and stuff like. And before I was a lawyer, also like I didn't hire a lawyer on all that stuff because it's like who can afford to do that? And I remember the first time I hired a lawyer to do a lease, I was like, man, it's like $1,500. I was like, this is crazy. Well, then I went to law school like 3 or 4 years later, and one of my teachers in property law, she said, do any of you guys rent a house or apartment? Let's give me your lease and we will shred it as a class. So I'm like, well, I own a house and I got buddies renting from me and I got some other houses. I'm like, here, use my lease that I paid for years earlier. And my teacher just shredded it. And I'm like, so then I was really mad that I paid 1,500 previously because I now, to this day, I have a better lease than I paid for back then. But, it
Wow.
was like, I couldn't afford I couldn't afford the Rolls Royce, so I scraped away with the Buick, and it was okay. But in hindsight, it wasn't that good, right? So, and nowadays it's easier because there's so much free resources online and all that kind of stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
just like your podcast, my podcast. Like when I remember teaching myself how to do IRR calculations and understand it in Excel. I'm like that wasn't teaching myself syndication metrics and stuff. That wasn't on the internet 10 years ago, or at least not that I could
Yeah.
easily. Well,
Yeah.
the IR stuff was, 15 plus years ago, but
It's definitely everywhere. TikTok, YouTube, you could just
oh
about
yeah,
get fully educated.
I
Almost.
I was telling an analyst here, I said, no exaggeration, I personally have more free content on syndication than existed on the internet when I started syndication. It's like
I
it's
believe
so
it.
much easier to get started today,
Yeah.
at least in that one respect. Obviously, it's more competitive today because it's gotten so mainstream that it's not as easy to buy a deal as it was, 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that real quick. Competitiveness. Now, when it comes to mobile home parks, there's more and more people getting into it. I mean, the curiosity is there. I almost want to say the stigma slowly fading. Could be wrong, but definitely there's a lot more people into communities, and that's when I go to events like where we were. It's like there's a lot of people here after the same thing, same product. I mean, how would you go about trying to get a good deal at this point with so many people being involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think for your first deal, the best, but you got two options, or three options probably. One, find it off market. Well, that's not easy. Okay. Two, overpay to get in the game for your first deal. Or three, take on a deal that's got some serious hair on it. Because like if it's just your first deal, if I'm a broker and you come to me and say, "Hi, my name is Jose. I'd like to buy my first park," I'm going to say, "Click," because you're less likely to close. All I want is close. I'm not going to talk to you. But if you buy, so I have some clients that I'll tell them like, "Look, you're overpaying by a little, in my opinion," because sometimes they'll ask me for my financial view, and they're like, "Yeah, I know, but it's only a 22 site, or if I overpay by 30 grand, it's not going to break me." But then I can call, because then next I'll call the broker and say, "Hi, my name is Jose. I'm looking to expand my existing MH portfolio." And the broker's like, "Oh, what kind of stuff do you buy?" And they may not ask. Some of them will say, "Well, how many you got?" But some of them just be like, "Oh, cool. You already got one? Yeah, I just bought one in Louisville. I'll be back around. You got anything in the region?" So I don't love that method, but I've seen
Fake it till
people
you
do
make
it.
it. What would you recommend?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, let me give you an example. My first park was 54 spaces in Quincy, Illinois, my hometown. The guy was asking $680,000. I offered like 635. He said no. I said, okay, 655. He said no. He said, if you give me 680, I'll give you like 10,000 of cost of closing or something. So I was like, are you serious? I really wanted the deal. And I wanted to get in the game, and it was like an 8+ cap, and I was pretty jazzed about it. And it was in my hometown. It had some scale. It was nice enough park, needed some TLC. So I ended up, I caved. And I said, okay, we're going to go for 680. We meet with him and his wife is a CPA. And she went through, oh, now we got to pay this in capital gain, blah, blah, blah. And they retraded me. This is before my binding LOI. They retraded me. They wouldn't sign the PSA unless I went to 695. And I said
Oh,
no. I said no, and they just waited. And I had to cave. And I felt it was horrible. So I bought for 695. So did I get a deal? No, I paid retail. Luckily, it appraised at 750. And at this point in time, my dad had a good relationship with the bank just from being in town and growing up with everybody and knowing everybody. We got 100% finance loan on a 695 deal. We sweat equity, fixed it up. We ended up selling that park for 950 3.5 years later.
Wow.
We
Okay.
had about 100 in it by the time we put some money in the capex and the homes and that kind of stuff. But we turned it, we made $350,000 or 250 some thousand. We made about 350 total because we paid some down and there was 2 acres next to it. We sold for 17, and so but all in was like made $350,000 on zero that became 100. So it was it was like, hey, yeah, I overpaid. So it's kind of like if you, me, and 5 other guys and gals want to be partners, it's like, well, you don't get 100% of the pie, but if together we get a pie, I get 20%. Hey, that's better than no pie. So that's kind
Yeah.
of how I tackled that first deal. Like I got to get in the game. And it was the best deal I could find. And it was a good starter park. It wasn't starter park as I mean like small, but it was starter park in that it was 7 miles from my dad's house,
Mm. Backyard.
where we knew some, we knew some vendors, things like that. So yeah, I didn't buy it at a bargain, but I made good money on it. And that's what I was like,
Yeah.
holy cow, it's hard to make that much money practicing law. I'm gonna get in the trailer park business. So here I
Yeah.
was.
Join the Trailer Park Boys for sure. They know what's going on. So lowering down to our viewers again, more so what they're focusing on, and we push them all to graduate eventually on the dirt. They're not making no more dirt, so you might as well buy some sooner or later. So I plan on buying a couple more parks this year as well. I'll definitely be reaching out to you now after hearing some more stuff I've never heard, but more from a beginner standpoint. So some of these guys, one thing that we help a lot of park operators is missing titles. And you keep talking about titles, which is more like land, I guess, the entire property, but titles in a mobile home. I'd say it is one of those little, it's small minimum, but it's a headache. It's a
Oh yeah.
freaking headache that you so much work for so little, but yet you need it. So one thing that we've noticed a lot is that a lot of people bypass titles.
No,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? This is even from homes we sell. What is the biggest issue, or I guess what is the worst thing can happen with people bypassing title after title?
Well, I mean, in theory, it's against the rules or local law. So there's, in theory, there's a big penalty, but practically it happens all the time. So the biggest problem is if you don't have good title in your name and you go to sell it, you may lose your sale on the next buyer. So like if I sold you, this was the title, I sold you this title right now. If I just sign as seller and give it to you, here's like the smart way to do it. If you're going to skip titles, I'm not advocating it, but it happened, right? I just sign as seller, I give it to you. You don't put your name in as buyer. Don't lose the title. You don't put your name in as buyer. You then sell it to John Smith for an extra $5,000. Good for you. You write John Smith's name in there, and it looks like I sold it to John Smith. I don't care because I already sold it. You don't care because you made 5,000 in the middle. Sometimes that backfires when the local jurisdiction, they got so tired of these skipping titles that they go to John Smith and say, um, they go, hey, well, Ferd never registered or Ferd never paid property taxes. And there's risk to John because if I just give you the title and you don't file for it, I could, if I was unscrupulous, I could file for a lost title. As if I lost it, I get a new one. I then go sell it to Jane Doe, and then you're out of luck. Now, practically with the mobile home, it's like you're going to have a pretty good idea where the unit is, and you're going to have a pretty good idea that you got the key to the door and I don't, right? So long as you have possession, it's less practical. But I've got a client right now that's dealing with it, but this guy sold my client some homes, like $380,000 of newer homes. He'd already sold them to other people. And this guy, he was kind of Lonnie dealing them in somebody else's park. And he had two people. He was paying them both, like he's managing them and paying them both rent. And it was a scam. He's like, oh, okay, you're getting rent. But like, really, it's like, you didn't really own the house. He was just paying you rent with the next guy's money. And it's like this Ponzi scheme, allegedly is our claim, right? So that's an issue with titles. I mean, the other issue with titles, if you just don't have one, well, then you got to go get one. Abandoned Housing Act is a huge pain. Lost titles have their flaws. Bonded titles are expensive and have some flaws. A lot of times you just go pay the property taxes and get the title. We do that. Anywhere we can do that, we just go pay the taxes. And because if somebody's abandoned it or dumped town, they probably haven't paid the tax. No, that's not like an abandoned one. If you're buying one from somebody, like let's say I'm paying you 20, so I'm paying you 10,000 for this home and you don't have title, I'm going to say, you got to get title. And if you say, well, it's not my name. Okay, well, whose name is it in? We got to go find them or next to kin, because otherwise what I don't want to do is pay you 10, move in, fix it up, and then, Jimmy from just comes back from Vietnam and says, "Hey, what are you doing in my house? I've been gone for a while. Thanks for fixing it up." Now I'm out the 10 to you plus my rehab cost and sweat equity. So titles are a huge pain in the butt.
Yeah.
But
We deal with that, and I love when sellers tell me, "Yeah, but I have a bill of sale. It's just as good."
yeah,
Well, that ain't
well,
just as good. But it's like, John sold to Jane, Jane sold to Jimmy, Jimmy sold to somebody, and somebody gave it to somebody. So going back to track 12 people, it's like I can't even find one.
right. So
So,
really, you just got to find the last person at either at the county, or you look for taxes, or you can do, if there's nobody living there, you can look at abandoned housing. You could try to find those people and get a quit claim deed. So here's what I've done on that. If they don't have title, I'll go find the other people and say, "Hey, I just bought the park." Now, in this case, I bought the park too. I'd say, "I just bought the park. That home is there. You're the last person on record." And they say, "Well, I already sold it to this guy, to that guy, to that guy." Boom, boom. I say, "So here's what I need. You owe me lot rent. And based on I bought the back rent, you owe me 7 years of lot rent." And
mm,
they're gonna want to hang up on you, right? You say, "But here's the good part. I'm gonna waive it all. And I'm actually gonna give you $100 bill. You meet me at Panera, I'll give you $100 bill, and I'm gonna buy your rights to it, and you're gonna quit claim the title over to me." Well, now I've got a bill of sale from somebody, the guy I'm actually paying, which shows he gave me his rights. But now I got a quit claim from somebody else. I can take the quit claim into the courthouse as a bill of sale from the last owner record. Ideally, I have a power of attorney in my bill of sale, and I can file for a title in my name because I have permission from the last owner record. Now, sometimes the problem is the home's not on the books with DMV where title is, and not on the books with the county for personal property taxes, or it's different people, and then it just gets hairier.
well, he listening. He just gave you a lot of good information. That may not work, and not everything doesn't always work, but that is definitely a new trail of opportunities. So, yeah, me typically any chance I can, if possible, and I always suggest this: take them to the tag office, make them close right there so that you can see them actually transferring, and you're going to quickly see who's trying to, because typically what happens is I know who hasn't transferred their titles right about this time of year. So those tax paperwork starts coming in as okay, John didn't transfer the title. I got to go show some bill of sale that I don't own it. I sold it. So last question for you all, and this is more on the contractor side. A lot of investors hire cheaper help, cheaper labor, and obviously when you think of that, you're thinking, well, they're licensed, they're not insured. People, they may know their craft, but how would you go, I guess, if possible, to secure yourself from hiring some of these people who are not really qualified and from getting sued or whatever may come from it?
Yeah, I mean, pros and cons of hiring the pros versus the schmoes. The pros got a name on their truck. It says Ferd's Plumbing, and I got a shirt that says Ferd. I got a business card. I might even have a website, so I'm probably licensed. I'm probably insured. I'm probably competent. The catch is I might not work in trailer parks, and I'm expensive, and I might be busy, so I might not be your man. And that's only for a little plumbing job. You got a whole rehab. It's tougher, even more. So the schmoes, the pro is typically they're more available and they're cheaper. The cons, are they may not be good. They may be, scam artist of some sort. They may be, just a drunk that's not going to get it done. They may not have a license or insurance. Most time you don't really need a guy with a license, but insurance is more important. At a minimum, you should have them all sign a W-9, so you can pay them as 1099, and
Mhm.
then two, a waiver that they waive any injury, and then another step three is you should have liability insurance for owning the home. I also recommend a personal umbrella liability insurance, which is really inexpensive. And then I also recommend work comp insurance. And at least the work comp that I use, let's say I hired you to do the flooring in my office right now. Um, I'll tell you you're an independent contractor. You are an independent contractor. I'll make you sign a waiver. I don't tell you that I actually have workers' comp. And then let's say you get hurt and you cut off your toe. I'm going to say, look, man, sorry, you're an independent contractor, you sign a waiver, you're on your own, sorry. But realistically, if you cut your leg off, you're going to you're going to go to find a lawyer and just be like, look, we can't work ever again, or at least not in this profession or whatever. You're going to try to lawyer up and sue. Well, I have workers' comp that would have had some level of coverage for you, and I have general liability insurance. Now, workers' comp, you have to pay a premium based on total wages paid and the job
Mm,
duty. So if you make 50,000 working for me and my legal secretary does, you're both making the same pay. So that variable is the same. But if you're doing flooring and using a chop saw, your job is by rule more dangerous. So the premium for you is more expensive. Now, if I end up hiring you and your brother and I've got 100,000 of payroll, when I get my annual premium audit, I'm going to have to kick in more money. Now, you'd be real careful on what is covered under your policies. Like in my policy, I can't have my guys do roofing or tree trimming or, heavy construction because that's a different classification and it's, more expensive. But maintenance and repair and landscape is a lower classification. And, if you were to do those type of
interesting.
tasks, you'd be covered.
Interesting. Well, there y'all have it. You plan on hiring an unlicensed contractor handyman, you better be protected. To take precaution, if you will, protect yourself. So, Bert, it's been great having you on here. There's never enough time to speaking with you, and we can keep rolling this for hours. But one thing that a lot of people always ask us is how do we connect with this gentleman or whoever we have? So I know you have your podcast. Tell us a little bit about your podcast, real quick.
Yeah, the Mobile Home Park Lawyer podcast, you can find it everywhere. My website, themobilehomelawyer.com. That's probably the easiest way to find me is you can just go click contact me and then you tell me what you need or what you issue. You want to buy a template document, you need legal representation, you have an idea for an episode, you can tell me all that kind of stuff there. And then, the podcast is free. So you can find it everywhere. I got, I don't know, 185 episodes or something out there. And we
Wow.
got blogs and articles and stuff too. So um that's the best way to reach me because I'll get to it. It'll get me an email and I can get to it after hours. I'm hard to catch during the day sometimes.
Do you do any coaching at this time? Any
Not coaching per se. I mean, I would say 10 to 20% of my legal practice is consulting. I try to bill it just like legal hours. It's not like it can be one-on-one. Like if you call and say, hey, will you give me, tips and should I do, new homes or used homes? Should I buy singles or doubles? Should I, rent them or sell them? Which bank should I use? What floor plan should I use? I can give you that advice, which is coaching, consulting. It's not legal advice, right? If you ask me, to review the title commitment on the land and your easements. Well, that's legal services. So but I don't have a coaching program. You've thought about it, but just at times, but just not enough hours in the day. So I got two companies. I don't need a third one.
No, no, I get it. Never enough time in the day. Well, thank you for joining me on here this evening. For those of you watching, I am going to put all his links to his social media that we have on this video. Definitely hit the like, subscribe, and go follow him. Great content. Check out his podcast. There's a lot of stuff on it. I'm on one of them. Very grateful you
Right.
had me on one of those, but check it out. And definitely, I'm sure Bert can help you any way possible. So, Bert, thank you for joining me this evening.
You got it. Thanks, Jose.
Till next time.
All right. Bye now.